it's Panda, and I've basically been vegan, like strict vegan, meaning eating no animal products for 2 years. Though throughout, I would say about 6 years of my life, I was a pescatarian as well. And during certain periods of my pescatarianism, there were times where I barely ate any um, fish, dairy, and eggs. So I would say maybe within the time I was a pescatarian, I would say for 2 years of it, I was pretty much a vegan. It was like something I only ate maybe like once every 2 months, to be honest. So how did I get into veganism? I remember going back really, really early into my childhood. I remember when I was about 10, 11 years old. I was actually in Iran. I was born in Britain, but I'm ethnically Persian, so my family are from Iran. So I was at a wedding, and I remember like in Iran, there's a tradition where when you get married, you have to kill a goat and jump over the blood of goat, the blood pouring out of the neck of the goat. And I remember looking at that was the first time I ever seen anything like that. I never really had the connection between what meat is and the fact it came from an animal. But even then, even though I saw that, it shocked me. I thought it was disgusting. I kind of sort of justified at the time more as a necessary evil. I thought it was something humans had to do. So in terms of how I actually got more into vegetarianism, well, at school I noticed that a few of my friends were vegetarian and they didn't eat meat, and I kind of thought, ooh, that's kind of cool. Like, there's people who don't do that. Like, I didn't know it was a thing at the time until I made friends with these people at school, and they were like telling me a little about like documentaries like Cowspiracy, Earthlings, Forks and Knives. So I would say when I was around 14, that's when I was interested in veganism. I idealized it, but when I like talked to my parents about it, they were like really against it. So they were just like, look, just be a pescatarian for now. And to be honest, I don't think at the time I was able to give up like some of the stuff I enjoyed, like the cakes and chocolates and all of that. Basically the unhealthy stuff. And I kind of thought, like, man, I'll go pescatarian. But I did want to end up going vegan. That was my goal. But I knew whilst I lived with my parents, I thought it would just be easier for me to stay pescatarian. So, but even that, they were still pretty against that as well. But they're kind of like, well, it's your choice. So, I remember when I went to back, like I go to Iran quite often to visit my family, and on many occasions, even just as a pescatarian, when I was going to Iran, like many of my family friends were just basically telling me how I'm going against human nature, and like the doctors in my family, they're basically telling me that I'm killing myself, I'm making myself mentally deficient. So like in Iran, they're like very anti like this whole like even vegetarianism, let alone veganism. So, but at the time, I kind of saw it as, oh, they're just telling me this because they don't want to eat like the stuff they like. They're just only eating meat for the sake of pleasure and convenience, as what many vegetarians and vegans would say. So the way I kind of saw it is, oh, they're just saying this to me because they feel bad, and I'm actually doing the good thing, and they're just trying to bring me down. So during this time, even when I was pescatarian, I did actually experience a bit of anxiety and fatigue. And I did get a blood test, and I had to go on, I had to actually go on iron tablets and vitamin D supplements for a bit. So even during just me being a pescatarian, I still had issues. And maybe this could be just because I come from a background where we are really meat heavy, like meat is in pretty much most of our meals. If not, like there's dairy and eggs. So maybe that could have been why even just still even eating fish, I still had a bit of issues. But it wasn't anything terrible, but there were some issues. So it was really when I went into university, and like I was really involved with like the metalhead community, and many of like my metalhead friends were vegan, and many of the bands that we like Arch Enemy, Creator, Cattle Decapitation, between the Buried and Me, like all of these bands, like a lot of them were vegan. And I also really got into like, was it Vegan Black Metal Chef and who else? Like, also I also really got into Monimi Frost as well at the time. And to me, it just seemed like this really like this really alternative sort of movement. Like it's like, oh, we discovered something cool, and like everyone else, oh, they're just kind of stuck to their old ways, and we're the like cool people, I guess. And at the time, I also really considered it to be something really healthy. I'm eating a lot of plants, it's cleansing, and I'm not eating like the corpses of animals. And I just saw it as, I mean, for me, whilst obviously there was like the health stuff that I was sold, but I would say for me, the main reason was really on ethical grounds. As I said, like this was something I felt since I was 14. So, I mean, what really actually got me to finally consider actually being vegan was that many people kept on telling me that if you just have fortified foods, you'll be fine. Because to me, the idea of having to take a daily supplement just to me didn't seem right. But if I thought, oh, I'm just buying like soy milks, oat milks, almond milks, whatever, like most of them have like the B12, vitamin D. So I kind of thought, well, that's fine. Like to me, it kind of seemed like a logical, rational, or if anything, an intelligent thing to do, to choose the cruelty-free option. Um, so, I mean, I didn't go vegan instantly. It was something I had to do gradually. Like at first, maybe I was like only eating like maybe like a can of sardines, like maybe like once every 2 weeks, and then slowly and slowly I reduced it. And once I actually cut it out, I really felt proud of myself, and I did feel better, but I'm not quite sure if I felt better because I was vegan. Perhaps maybe I just felt better because of the ego I had for not killing animals. I felt like I'm doing something great for the planet, and I was just helping the world, essentially. That's really how I felt. So also during this time, I also started to develop pretty bad anxiety and depression, to the point where I had to see my GP quite regularly, and I was put onto antidepressants, which, I mean, looking back now, it actually does seem pretty inconsistent, although many vegans seem to do this, considering the fact many, like antidepressants, they are tested on animals, but many don't seem to have an issue with this. But we'll get into that a bit later. So, I mean, a lot of the times, because like my mum, she would post me articles like telling me that, look, there's like a link between like depression and like veganism. And like I said, to me, I kind of always saw it as, oh, my mum's just she feels bad about her diet, and like she's just showing me all of this to bring me down and to make me go back to their old ways because she isn't willing to go vegan. And the way I kind of saw it was, oh, I think it's just more people who are anxious and depressed are just more likely to go vegan. So that's the way I justified it. I didn't really see, at the time, I didn't even really think that me being vegan was causing the mental health issues I was having. So I mean, a lot of the times whilst I was vegan, like I noticed that I was starting to get really angry at people eating. Like, I mean, I never really expressed it to people because I always like to try and be nice, but I did deep inside feel this big anger of, oh, why are you eating the suffering and all of that. So a lot of the times when I was like just by myself, I had to constantly watch like factory farming videos just to keep telling my mind that, look, if you eat that, you're basically like justifying like the animal holocaust. So that's the way I thought about it. So I had to keep watching these videos to basically train my mind to tell me that, no, you shouldn't do that. It's kind of like a religion if you think about it in some ways. So, I mean, for about, I'd say, my first year as a vegan, I actually gained weight. I know many people don't get this, but I think for me, the reason I gained weight was perhaps I mean, I didn't feel this at the time, but perhaps I just wasn't satisfied. So I kind of felt like I kept on eating and eating. eating because I kind of felt like I wasn't getting the adequate nutrition. And a lot of the times, like many popular vegans, like they'll promote like, look, you need to eat more calories, you need to get more nutrition. Um, and I always kept on reading a lot. Like when I was vegan, I kept on having to read a lot of literature, like to how to get complete protein, iron, zinc, calcium, vitamin A, and um, like I also kept on sort of thinking, well, how on earth can I get vitamin A and like what is it, omega-3, ALA? And I kept on thinking, oh, well, my body can just convert it. It's fine. So I always had to keep assessing my diet all the time. And even though I was assessing it all the time, I was always thinking about food. I still was having issues. So there are many times I had to keep changing. Like, for instance, I would up my protein. I would eat a lot of protein. And um, like one thing I had, there were times I did, you know, you can get like those packets of the fake meats. I would like eat an entire one in a sitting. I also really got into energy drinks as well, like the ones where they fortify stuff in it. And I never even used to drink energy drinks before I was like vegan. And I really kept on having to have a lot. And maybe this was just because I was deficient and I felt like I had to keep getting because a lot of, was it like Red Bull and all of that, they put like a lot of B vitamins in it. Um, and then at this point, during my veganism, there was like the whole like soy boy sort of scare, like, oh, if you eat soy, it's really bad for you and all of that. So I didn't want, so I really sort of tried to decrease my soy. I started getting into protein powders, peanuts, lentils, and I was starting to get dissatisfied because at least when you have soy, even though there's issues with it, you kind of at least feel like you're eating something meaty. Like it kind of brings that into your psyche. But at this point, I just kind of started to feel like all I'm just eating is just mush. Um, and I also at this point started taking a vegan multivitamin. And the way I justified it was, well, most humans have to take vitamin D. So I thought, well, it's pretty much the same thing. It's just got other stuff in it. So I would say maybe like a year and a half, I kind of actually started to realize that maybe I don't have the healthiest diet, especially that I told you I was drinking a lot of energy drinks. And I just kept on eating a lot of stuff just to feel filled and just to try. So I was gaining a lot of weight as well, but I was dissatisfied. But I always felt like every time when I went to bed, I was just like, I was so happy that I was helping the environment and the animals. Like, to me, that was the main thing that was making me happy. And also at this point, a lot of the times, like my mum would sort of tell me like, hey, like, I think your hair's falling out. Like, there's a lot of hair in the shower. There's a lot of hair in your bed. Like, even the cleaner started noticing it. She's just like, there's hair everywhere. And she was going on about like the spots on my skin. And I kept on thinking, like, oh, I've only just been doing this for a year and a half. Maybe it's detox or maybe she's just trying to push me off the track. Because this is the thing. I always feel like when I kept on talking to like the online vegan community, they always kind of like to keep on insisting when people like criticize aspects of like the symptoms you have or what you eat in your diet. They always try and be like, oh, they're only just saying this because they feel bad about what they're doing and they're trying to make themselves feel better by bringing you down. So that's what I kept on thinking. So I just started to just keep getting so anxious, and I even ended up on a few occasions whilst I was at university, I ended up actually having a few suicidal attempts, but I never really linked it to my vegans. I just thought it was just something else. Also during this period, I also got very heavily involved with weed, which I never really even had I was so anti-drugs before, and until that point. And perhaps maybe the reason I resorted to weed is because I didn't want to be suicidal, and I kind of thought, well, this is what's giving me the high I need, that I wasn't getting from my diet, I guess. Um, I was just so involved with a lot of these vegan groups, and I it really felt so culty, but I kind of at the time really liked it because I felt like it kind of gave me a purpose, a reason. Um, I, like I felt like we were just doing something amazing for the world, and like the reason I sort of say it was really religious, like for instance, like I remember one time I mentioned that one time my friend like bought me a curry and I didn't realize it had like a milk protein, and they'll still be like, oh my god, your friend's like the worst person ever. They're like justifying like the rape of cows and all of that. So I started to become really anxious just hanging around non-vegan people because I always had the feeling that, oh, like they're going to give me something that's not vegan, and like I didn't want to just be involved with any of that. So I really felt like I was getting really isolated, to be honest. I started developing a bit of a hatred for my family, like hatred, like every time I open the fridge, I'm just like, there's disgusting stuff in the fridge. I even started throwing away stuff that weren't vegan because I thought this was just horrible. Like, this is something you shouldn't eat. It's bad. So I was just going crazy, to be honest. So, as I said, since I was quite suicidal at university, I had to end up dropping out. And after like a few months of dropping out, I got to the point where I really needed to get a job because I was just running out of money, and I was getting to the point where if I didn't get a job, I would have had to go into like on some like benefits scheme, and I was close. So I ended up finding a job in the sushi counter. So like we had to deal with a lot of raw fish, and at this point I had to moderate myself because the way I kind of saw it is, well, I mean, luckily for me, since I'm kind of libertarian leaning, I'm kind of against the whole benefits sort of thing. To me, I kind of saw it as, well, I think it's a lesser evil for me to work for a company that sold animal foods, as opposed to me being like, no, I'm not going to work there. I'm just going to go on benefits. At least I had that within me that allowed me to sort of do this job. So actually, the sushi counter I work is actually in the supermarket. So I was like right next to the meat counter. So I was just basically surrounded by raw meat, raw fish, like every time when I went to work. So a lot of times when I was at work, there were times where I had panic attacks. I was really fatigued, and there were times where I ended up missing work as well. I mean, at the time, I kind of thought it was just, oh, I was just mentally weak. I'm just shit at everything. I'm just a weak person. So as I said, I really didn't want to go into like some benefit scheme or anything. So I kind of thought, well, what will help me motivate me to go to work? And I kept on thinking really deeply about this, how I can go upon this. One thing I came across whilst being involved with like the online vegan community world, I noticed a few people talking about veganism. And veganism, for people who don't know, it's when you basically are vegan, but you put an exception to things that are thrown in the bin. So to me, I'm like, I can actually incorporate that in work. Because apart in my job, when we go in first morning, like at 6:30, we have to throw away all the sushis in order for us to make fresh sushis for the day. So what I started doing is I would like keep a few of the sushis that whilst I was like throwing it away, and I started to eat them for my lunch. And the way I justified this was, well, it's actually better for the environment for me to eat something that's about to be thrown away than for me to just throw all of it away and go and buy my separate vegan meal. So I first started actually eating breaded shrimp, which that was okay. But I would say when I really started to notice a difference was when I started eating the raw salmon. And I, I actually, it was kind of nice when I had it for the first. It felt really firm, and that wasn't something I was used to, especially since at this point I pretty much cut out my soy because of the health issues, and it felt really nice to eat something like a bit firm again. But even whilst I was eating it, I kept on telling myself that this is wrong, and a lot of the times, like in the vegan online community, they kept on telling me I'm just basically normalizing eating animals, and I'm justifying carnism. I could get mercury poisoning. So like all of these sorts of things. But at the same time, I would say what helped me actually go along with it, I kept saying, I'm doing it for the environment. I'm doing it for the environment. Um, so I noticed that when I started eating the raw fish, I was a lot better at going to work. I wasn't missing work anymore. And if anything, I actually felt like I wanted to go work because that was the only time I was not eating vegan. Um, and during this time, actually, I actually did go on holiday for a week. So for 1 week, I wasn't going to work. And obviously, at this point, I wasn't able to find anything that was being thrown in the bin. So I started to feel bad again because I wasn't eating any animal foods. And at this point, I think I really started to sense that, maybe my veganism has something to do with this. Maybe it is actually my veganism that's what's causing me to feel um, anxious. So, I mean, I still wasn't like ready to be like, okay, I don't want to be vegan anymore. So what I ended up doing is I thought, okay, maybe I'm just deficient in something. And so I started reading more about what's in animal foods that we can't get from plant-based foods. I wanted to understand more of the science behind it. And what I actually ended up realizing that multivitamin I was taking wasn't a great source. All the fortified foods I was having wasn't a great source. It turns out the vitamin B12 and D that they use in fortified foods is a very, very poor source. And our bodies can't even absorb it that well. And it turns out that if I wanted to get a better source of B12, I had to switch to methylcobalamin, which is a better source, which does cost more. I also started going to the gym. I developed a gym routine at this point, and I was not gaining any muscle whatsoever. And I realized if I had to do this, I just had to supplement much more. And as I was sort of just figuring it out, I was just researching loads of websites and watching reviews by vegans. I realized that this is actually pretty expensive for me to adequately supplement what I needed. And then I was just kind of thinking that it kind of struck to me that, is this really a plant-based diet? Like, to me, this kind of seems more like a chemical-based diet. Like, it kind of seems like I'm sick. Like, someone who has to take, like, 5 or 6 supplements, that doesn't really seem like something a healthy person would do. But I still was sold onto the whole veganism bit. I started watching more, I guess you could say, honest vegans, like Unnatural Vegan and Vegan Police, who really started to show what they're eating. And I was just like, oh my God, how much are they having? Like, this is crazy. And even they were like constantly going on like, oh yeah, this vitamin doesn't work. I should try this vitamin instead. So like, even though they were having like all of these vitamins, even those vitamins weren't necessarily working and they had to try other ones. So it kind of seemed like they were kind of doing a bit of an experiment on their body. And another thing I started to notice with some vegans was, like, for instance, Unnatural Vegan. She did a video about how she's on antidepressants. And to me, I really started to feel it can't, like, it can't be a coincidence that many vegans seem to have issues with mental health as well. And why is it that many, like, there are also some vegans who also have plastic surgery, which that's also like not great for the animals as well, because you have to do a lot of animal testing in order in order to have the facilities to have plastic surgery. Like someone like Freely, like it shocked me that someone that goes on about she cares about the animals and all of that, and she went and got something so vain. So to me, it kind of felt like, do all of these vegans actually care about the animals, or do they kind of like the ego and fad of being vegan? Do they kind of just like showing off, like, oh, this is my vegan makeup, this is my vegan clothing? Like, it just to me kind of just seemed a bit like a trend. Like I started to get that vibe from veganism. Um, Also around this point, I'd say about 5 months ago, I actually became pretty good friends with this girl who was actually an ex-vegan, and she's now eating paleo. And I at this point, I was so emotionally into veganism, so I kept on going on about the animal suffering, factory farming, and all of that. And one thing she said to me that really struck me was, like, she said that she herself wasn't even completely against all the emotional arguments vegans say, but it came to the point that she's like, what's the point of all of these arguments of, oh, killing animals is bad and like we shouldn't milk animals, getting eggs is bad, when humans need animal products to sustain optimum health? It's kind of like saying, well, a lion shouldn't like go and kill a deer because it's not nice to animals. It's irrelevant. If you need it, then you need it. The whole emotional argument doesn't it doesn't hold ground if it's something we need. And she also started to challenge, because see, the thing is, she was an ex-vegan, so she knew how to challenge me. So like she kept on asking me about K2. And she told me about vitamin A, and at that point I thought, well, I can have carrots. She's like, yeah, but you need to be able to convert it, and not everyone can do that. At this point, I kind of felt, I actually think she has better arguments, but she's only doing this because she didn't do veganism properly, and I'm going to do it properly. That's how I felt. We did actually talk a lot about bivalves as well, which that actually got me interested, but I did actually end up eating it a few times, and I threw up on three occasions. Like, I was that desperate to want to be able to have bivalves, but I couldn't. So for me, the only option was to just go on loads and loads of supplements. And this was around the point, actually, when I started to find more ex-vegans on YouTube, and also like, for instance, I watched a few of your videos. Like the first video I watched by you was funnily the one with Monami Frost, and like in the video she was like holding like a really big jug of water, and you were sort of saying that water dehydrates you, and that kind of confused me initially, but it got me really interested, because I did sense whilst I was vegan, I developed a big craving for ice cold water. Like not even on a hot day, like even if it was just a normal day, I just always wanted to drink ice cold water. I never understood what that meant until one time I sort of Googled, like, why am I craving ice cold water all the time? And it turns out that people who like crave really icy things are actually deficient in iron. But that confused me, because I thought my supplement was giving me iron. So I thought I was taking care of that. Why on earth am I, according to my cravings with, icy water, why am I still deficient? And it's really interesting, because then you look at all these vegan YouTubers, they always like to freeze all their fruits, freeze like bananas, blend them, and to me, I'm like, is this all to just cover up for like an iron deficiency? Perhaps, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a nutritionist or anything, but I just started to notice a bit of a trend with that. And also during this period, I remember one time I was sitting next to my mum and we were like watching this documentary about athletes. And there was this one bit in the documentary where they were going on about hydrating after exercising. So they just gave the athletes, was it like water, milk and orange juice, I think. Yeah. But I remember there was definitely milk. And during this, and I think they put coconut water as well, but I can't remember. But there was definitely milk. And during the study, the documentary, they found that milk hydrates you far better than any of the other things. And that really confused me. I was like, what? How comes milk hydrates you? I thought water's hydrating. Like, I just felt like there was just a lot of things that were starting to be quite inconsistent with veganism. I also watched one of your videos when you were going on about animal blood, and you were going on about how milk is essentially made from animal blood. And I don't know why, but as soon as you said that, I really started to crave animal blood. Like, because as I said, at work, I'm surrounded by like a lot of meat, a fish. And I really, like every time I looked at meat, I'm just like, I really, really just want to have the animal blood. But I felt so bad for believing this. It really made me feel bad, but I kind of felt like maybe this is what I need. And I guess the way to put it is I really think you doing all those ex-vegan videos really helped me to reconsider my vegan mindset. Because I was watching those videos and seeing like all these people you interviewed, and they were going on about all of the supplements and how it didn't even work. And then you also started talking about like how like all of like these are like chemicals, like they're derived from petroleum or made in the lab. And that really interested because then you never ever hear a vegan ever. They always keep going on about where the meat is sourced, how the milk is obtained, but they never ever go on about how the supplement is made. And it's interesting how many of like the popular vegans, they never really show their supplements. They kind of like to hide it. And I didn't like that. It seemed pretty dishonest. And I also didn't like the fact that the reason I even became vegan in the first place was because I thought I was just going to be fine having fortified foods. Because like most people who aren't vegan, they just kind of feel funny about taking supplements. So I kind of felt tricked. I felt like I was tricked because I thought fortified foods would be fine, but it isn't. So I also started to learn about this farmer called Simon Fairley. He was going on about actually veganism isn't actually that superior for the environment. And this environmental figure, like, I can't remember the exact statistics, but it was like if you eat meat, you're like, it's this much worse for the environment, but if you're like vegan, it's like that much. I can't remember the numbers to my head, but he was sort of saying that like this isn't a really, this is like a figure derived by the United Nations, and it's not actually completely true. And one thing that he actually brought up, which I thought was interesting, is that these days we don't really eat we don't eat all of the animal. Like when we're kind of accustomed to only just eat just the muscle. Like we don't ever really eat the bones or like the organs and any of that. And I thought that really struck a little memory in me, because when I was in Iran, a lot of Iranians, they're really into eating the organs of the animals. Like there will be like an entire restaurant dedicated to just selling liver or just heart or brain. We don't really see that in the West, which is interesting. I'm not quite sure why it's like that here. And he was going on about how it's essential for animals to graze the lands. And what other thing? And vegans like to go on about how like it's really great for the environment and all of that, but many of them fail to consider that a lot of like the plants we grow, not all of them are necessarily, they don't grow well enough that it's good for consumption. Like a good example I can bring up is avocados. At work, like we get so many avocados because obviously we use a lot of avocados for the sushis. There are so many occasions where we have to end up chucking like 2 or 3 boxes of avocados away just because they're all like brown. But like we never have that problem with fish, for instance. We've never had to chuck away a fish. They're all fine if you like store it correctly. When you fish the fish, you wouldn't need to throw it away. But with avocados, I could see my managers were spending so much money on just bloody avocados all of the time because we always just kept on having to throw it away. So there was a lot of these sorts of things going, like this whole inconsistencies, seeing a bit of hypocrisies, and also I would say the main thing for me is just the fact that it's not a diet optimum for humans. And as someone who, I consider myself someone who's against feminism, I do really like to look into tradition. And I noticed the inconsistency with myself that I'm really into learning about tradition. But I don't even eat a traditional diet. And so I thought, you know what, if I'm really into learning about tradition, why not learn more about tradition in terms of diets? And I started to learn about diets around all over the world, and you don't really see much of a history with even vegetarianism. And the only countries that do have a history with vegetarianism is, India, China, and Japan. Those are like the 3 countries vegans like to refer to, which is really funny because both of those 3 countries are turning away from vegetarianism. Most of them are increasing their meat and dairy egg intake. So it's the West that are heavily trying to decrease their intake from, I don't know, pressure from somewhere. And one thing that really interested me was the reason why at the time a lot of like governments in India liked the fact many people were eating a plant-based diet was because since they weren't getting the adequate nutrition, it allowed them to control them better because their brains weren't receiving everything they needed. Because when you actually look into all of the stuff that's lacking in a plant-based or vegan diet, like creatine, carosine, heme, iron, all of the stuff that's lacking is all to do with brain function and muscle function. Isn't that just basically making people weak? At this point, I thought I didn't want to become an experiment for the supplement companies. Because the only reason veganism is this new thing is just because we have the technology to create a lot of supplements. That's the only reason why. If let's put it this way, to anyone that's vegan and watching this, why was there never veganism in our history? Like the only case of veganism you would ever hear about is only when people were fasting for maybe like a few months. You wouldn't ever find a population who were just vegan throughout their life. So the only reason we have veganism now is just because of supplements. And this is why, to me, it's kind of inaccurate to call veganism a plant-based diet. It's a chemical-based diet. So once I've started to get to these sorts of conclusions, I thought at this point, I don't think I'm not going to be staying vegan. But I would say for me, the toughest part from transitioning away was probably the mindset I've developed. Maybe some vegans who secretly watch your video may face this issue where maybe they have started to accept that they don't have a healthy diet or that they have to have a lot of supplements. But because, see, this thing is vegans are so good at guilt tripping you into this whole emotional argument to the point where, like, if you end up leaving, it's like, oh, you don't want to end up becoming those ex-vegans. Like, they really sort of hate them and all of that. So I guess for me, what really helped push me was honestly, I would say I really just started to, I know this is something you'll hear a lot from ex-vegans, but it's more you start to tune into your body. And I actually find people who maybe aren't as intellectual, they don't go and read all the whole, was it learning about like vegan nutrition and all that. Most of these types of people end up giving veganism maybe after like a few weeks or months. But I kind of felt like the only reason I persisted to 2 years was just because I kept on reading all of these journals and articles and all of that. And that's what kind of helped me persist. But if you just do something as simple as just tuning in, and for me, what I kept on feeling was I really need animal blood. Like I kept on feeling that all of the time. I actually ended up breaking it, like besides having the raw fish that I was having for free at work, when I watched this video when you're going on about raw milk. And that's interesting because you never actually hear vegans criticizing raw milk. They always just criticize the processed milks that we have in our supermarkets. They never ever bring up raw milk. And I started learning more about that, and it was really interesting to me that actually the whole lactose thing isn't even an issue if you have raw milk. So I thought, look, I care about animals. I care about animal ethics. Why don't I go and source it from a good supplier? So I ended up finding a supplier that does raw goat's milk. I specifically went for goat's milk since goat's milk isn't, people don't drink it as much, so there isn't a demand to get as much goat's milk like compared to, let's say, cow's milk. And like the one I found about, like they help the baby goat still gets the milk from the mum, so they still have it for like about a month, and then they slowly wean it off. So to me, I'm like, this is the most ethical thing I'm doing. I'm helping, supporting like animals grazing the land, which is essential for farming. Like one thing vegans fail to consider is grazing is such an important part of agriculture. If we don't raise animals for them to graze, we lose out on a lot of lands that we can have food. So I ended up buying this. If anyone's interested, I actually have a video up where I show my reaction to drinking the goat's milk. And I'm going to be real here. It was really emotionally tough for me to do it until I actually drank it. And oh my God, I felt that my entire world was just taken away. It was so nice to have something that was actually really, really creamy for once. Like not fake creamy, but actually creamy. And I felt like after, let's say, about an hour or two, I felt so much calmer. I felt like I was connected to nature. I kind of felt high, if anything, but high in a good way. In a way that it was real. It wasn't like some drug I was doing to like to just phase me out. It actually helped me get in tune with nature, and I started to focus a lot better. And another thing I also experienced over the duration of having the raw goat's yogurt, over, let's say, about 3 weeks, my teeth started to become firmer. Like I didn't even realize my teeth were so loose. Like it was really weird that because I was so trapped in the vegan mindset, I didn't even realize I was experiencing a lot of deficiencies. I started to feel stronger. I don't feel anywhere near as anxious anymore. Don't feel depressed at all. I mean, I'm not saying it's like completely gone away, but I'll definitely say by about 80% it's been reduced. A lot more motivated my life, and I'm like, why did I wait so long to do this? So I guess for me, I've realised that if, like from talking to a lot of these paleo people, that they actually do care about animals. If anything, if you care about animals, you can actually raise the best meat, dairy, and eggs possible. Because um, it was really interesting to me when I started talking to a lot of these ex-vegans and people who are like paleo. They always keep going on about how it's important for animals to be grass-fed, how it's important for them to have a good life. Because if they don't have a good life, we don't have good meat. A lot of these ex-vegans and paleo types, that they do actually care for animal welfare, but they also care for their health as well. And that essentially you are going against nature if you eat this vegan diet. And you just making yourself go crazy. So, what was I going to say? What else did I introduce to my diet? Yeah, actually a few days ago, for the first time, I ended up, believe it or not, I managed to, for my first red meat, I actually ended up eating it raw. I had it at it was actually at a really fancy restaurant. It's called Duck and Waffle, if anyone's heard of it. And one thing I really liked about the restaurant was when you got the menu, it wrote down exactly where everything was sourced, like the meat, the dairy, and the eggs. And I'm like, that's really nice. Like, and I was able to just Google up the places and see like how they're raised, what sort of diet they ate, and like the beef that they were serving there was grass fed. So I thought, well, I'm basically eating an animal that's had like a really good life, and I was desperate for animal blood, because it was a craving I had as soon as I watched your video. So basically I got steak tartare, which was it raw beef and raw egg. There was a little bit of other stuff as well to make it look all fancy, but it was mainly that. And when I ate that, oh my God, I felt like I was part of my family again. I felt like I was able to connect to them, and I felt like I just felt calm. I'll probably say the biggest feeling I had out of everything from eating animals is getting calm, and it's amusing because vegans keep going on about how like having animal foods is like this violent, disgusting thing, when in fact they're the ones that are so violent as well. And like, look, just go and watch a Vegan Gains video. Like, he's crazy. Like, to me, I've just got the impression that a lot of these vegans either are really, really angry or are pretty depressed. Like, I mean, the only vegans you meet that seem sane are the ones who've only been vegan for only like 2 years. Like every vegan that you see that's been vegan for like 10, 20 years, a lot of them look like drug addicts, if I'm being honest. A lot of them look like they're really aging, and I'm just really glad that I managed to wake up from all of this after 2 years, because I'm telling you, if I was having such issues in 2 years, I probably would have ended up in hospital, to be honest, from malnutrition if I decided to continue to eat this way. So, I mean, I'm just really annoyed that I got into this diet, because I really did sense that I started eating a lot more unhealthy, like the whole energy drink thing. That was something I never even had to have when I wasn't vegan. But when I was vegan, I was having like 2-3 cans of energy drinks, or like those fortified milks. I had to drink 2 cartons of it because I just didn't feel satisfied. Was it the goat yogurt thing? Only had to have this much. I didn't even have to drink that much to feel satisfied. Like about a quarter of a glass was enough for me to feel the benefits of me having 2 cartons of the fake vegan drink milks.
It's very common with the energy drinks. I've heard it a million times.
Really?
Yeah. Did you have any vegan friends, and do you still have contact with any of them?
I mean, my my main vegan friends were at university, but I didn't really talk to them much since I've left.
Yeah. Another question. What do you think is the future of veganism? What's going to happen?
Honestly, I feel like the main thing that's going to happen is a rise of more mental health issues. It can't be a coincidence that these two things seem to be linked. A lot more people going on medication, a lot of people having to rely on supplements. I mean, perhaps I'm only just saying this just from my perspective in terms of what I suffered and sort of seeing other vegans going through this as well. Because I don't know, most of the vegan people I knew, a lot of them were on some sort of mental health related medication. And they weren't, and they haven't even been vegan for long. So to me, the future of veganism seems to be more people with mental health issues.
Yeah. Do you regret veganism, or was it just a life lesson?
I kind of see it as a bit of both, to be honest. I mean, the only thing I can say that may have been positive about the fact I went vegan is the fact that I care a lot more about sourcing where I get my foods now. But I don't know, maybe I could have came to this conclusion without being vegan. Maybe I could have learned about raw milks or grass-fed animals without having to go vegan. But I don't know, it kind of seems like a lot of people who are on more sort of paleo type diets seem to have gone through the vegan route. So I'm not sure if I would have ended up being more conscious about what I eat if I went vegan or not. But I would say more of a life lesson, to be honest. I've really realised that you just can't go against human nature whether you like it or not.
Yeah. That sums it up, or do you want to add anything more? Anything important?
Anything important?
Anything special, or any lesson you learned? Anything like that?
I guess the only thing I have to say is, like, it's mainly sort of just to people who are still vegan or who, like, they're starting to have doubts or feeling a bit weird about it. Like, the minds going off the mindset is really tough. I'll probably say that's the hardest part. But once you actually start having the animal foods, you start to realize, why have I waited for this long?
Right.
So just go ahead with it. If you really care about animals, if that's the main reason why you're vegan, go and source it. And that way you'll feel a little less guilty. And don't feel bad. Like, we don't feel bad about other animals who need to rely on animals to survive. So why should we feel bad about it ourselves when we need it?
Yes, that's what vegans need to realize.
Yeah, I guess the reason they don't realize is I do feel like there's this whole being egotistical, like within the vegan movement, that they're kind of above it all, that they managed to reach a higher level. They're going against their instincts, so that's a good thing. So I really feel like a lot of vegans, like myself when I was one, I saw it more as I'm just more intelligent. Like I know more about nutrition than you. I record like whether I'm having complete proteins. I record everything chronometer. Like, I'm doing better. And a lot of vegans always like to bash on people who eat, like the fake junk foods, when it's really easy to bash on people who are like eating just McDonald's and all of that, but rarely do you ever see vegans like criticizing someone that's eating a healthy diet, but just so happens to have animal foods in it as well. It's always, they always go on about people having McDonald's and like crisps and chocolates and all of that, which, to be honest, I think there are many diets that are better than that. So it's just an easy argument to make yourself feel superior, I guess.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Thank you.